The galaxy had forgotten humans. To most alien empires, Earth was nothing more than a quiet world with a broken past. They believed humanity's age of war had ended centuries ago, that humans had fallen behind in technology, that their fleets had rusted away. Aliens laughed when they spoke of Earth ships, calling them relics, outdated metal that should have been left in a museum. But the aliens were wrong. On the outer rim of the galaxy, a massive war was burning. The Vorkal Dominion, a cruel empire of warlords, had crushed dozens of peaceful species. Entire planets were stripped, cities burned, and people were chained. Resistance seemed impossible. Their fleets were huge, their weapons advanced, and no one dared to stand against them. The galaxy cried out for help, but no savior came. Then, a signal appeared. It came from an old human colony, thought abandoned for generations. A single broadcast traveled across the stars, one sentence repeated over and over, "Humanity has returned." At first, alien leaders ignored it. Some laughed. Some mocked. Others warned that humans were reckless and dangerous, but their words carried little weight. Everyone thought humanity had no fleet, no weapons, nothing but memories of a violent past. But in the cold void beyond known space, something was moving. A convoy of ships slipped out of the dark. They were massive, armored, and built from ancient human designs. Their hulls carried scars from battles fought long ago. Their engines roared like thunder, but compared to modern alien warships, they looked old, too old to win a war. Alien scouts who first saw them sent back mocking reports, "Humans fly relics. They are fools to even try." The first human fleet to return was led by an enormous warship named Iron Requiem. It was a Titan-class battleship, older than most alien empires themselves. Its design was simple, brutal, and terrifying. A floating fortress. Its commander, Admiral Elias Kor, stood on the bridge and looked at the endless stars. He was calm, almost cold, but behind his eyes burned a fire the galaxy had forgotten. "Let them laugh," Elias said. "They don't know what these ships were built for." The first battle came quicker than anyone expected. A Vorkal raiding fleet, fresh from destroying another colony, intercepted the humans near the rim. Their warlord mocked them across open channels. "Your ships are outdated. Your weapons are weak. Your people are finished." The human fleet gave no reply. When the Vorkal fired first, the stars lit with deadly beams. Alien cannons tore through the void, expecting human shields to collapse. But the old ships did not fall. Their armor, layers of dense metal, absorbed the fire. When the humans answered, their weapons unleashed a storm. Massive kinetic slugs, railguns so large they shook space, ripped through alien ships like paper. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it ended, the Vorkal fleet was nothing but burning wreckage drifting in silence. The old human ships stood unharmed, their hulls glowing with the heat of battle, their guns still smoking. The galaxy had expected rust and weakness. What it saw instead was fury. Word spread fast. Alien networks carried the news like wildfire. Humans had returned, and their so-called obsolete fleet had destroyed one of the Dominion's strike forces without losing a single ship. Fear spread across empires. Some whispered that humans had found new technology. Others said humans had never truly been weak, they had only been waiting. On a small council world, alien diplomats argued in panic. "If the humans rise again," one shouted, "the balance of the galaxy will shatter." But far from politics and fear, inside the Iron Requiem's war room, Admiral Elias Kor stood before his officers. Around him, holograms of enemy fleets flickered. The Dominion's empire was vast, far larger than the human fleet could face directly. But Elias knew something the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity did not fight with just ships. Humanity fought with will, with strategy, with fury born from centuries of survival on a death world. And these old warships, though ancient, had been built for one purpose only, to destroy. "Let the galaxy remember," Elias said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber like thunder. "These ships may be old, but they are human ships, and that is enough to burn an empire." The officers nodded. The next battles were already being planned. The Dominion would strike harder, larger fleets would come, and the galaxy would watch. But the humans were ready. In the void beyond the stars, the Iron Requiem and her sister ships turned toward the heart of the war. Engines roared. Guns prepared. The humans were moving. And the galaxy was about to learn a deadly truth. What aliens called obsolete, humans called unstoppable. The wreckage of the Vorkal fleet still burned in silence when the galaxy began to tremble. News traveled fast across the stars. Alien ships fleeing the battlefield had carried desperate reports. The humans were back, and their obsolete war machines had destroyed an entire Dominion strike group in minutes. At first, many leaders refused to believe it. They called the reports lies, or accidents. The Vorkal must have been careless, they argued. No relic fleet could stand against modern weapons. But those who had seen the battle with their own eyes knew better. They had watched ancient human cannons split apart ships that were supposed to be invincible. The Dominion warlords were furious. One of them, High Lord Vaynar, gathered his commanders inside a fortress station carved into the rock of a dying moon. His voice thundered across the chamber. Humans dare to rise again? They bring their broken relics into our space? Then we will crush them so completely that no one will ever speak their name again. Orders spread through the Dominion fleets. Thousands of ships were prepared, stronger and larger than the first strike group. The galaxy expected the humans to run, to hide behind weak colonies or fade into the dark again. But humanity did not retreat. Admiral Elias Corr stood at the command bridge of the Iron Requiem. The massive Titan-class ship hung silent in space, surrounded by its sister vessels. The officers around him were tense, but their eyes burned with the same fire as their commander. Reports flashed across the screens. The Dominion fleet was coming, an armada of hundreds of ships. Elias studied the map carefully. Every alien watching thought the humans would be crushed. But Elias was smiling, just slightly. "They don't understand," he whispered. "They think war is about numbers. They think technology wins battles. They have forgotten what humans do best." The fleet did not move toward safety. Instead, Elias gave the order to advance, straight into Dominion territory. The human ships looked slow, heavy, like rusting giants in the dark. But each one carried secrets no alien understood. The second battle came near the edge of a nebula, its swirling gases glowing red and blue like fire. The Dominion armada dropped from warp in tight formation, hundreds of sleek ships shining with modern weapons. Their warlord opened the channel, laughing as his face appeared on human screens. "You should have stayed dead," the alien growled. "Now we will finish what history began." Elias gave no answer. His fleet moved into the nebula, disappearing into its glowing fog. The Dominion ships pursued, sensors scanning wildly, weapons ready. They expected to catch their prey in chaos. Instead, they walked into a trap. The nebula hid mines, dozens, hundreds of them, released by human ships hours earlier. They were not advanced alien mines. They were simple, brutal, heavy explosives, armed with magnetic triggers. When the first Dominion ships entered the cloud, the mines ignited. Explosions ripped through their formation, tearing apart cruisers and shattering frigates in seconds. Panic spread as fire and metal filled the nebula. And then the humans attacked. From the fog, railgun rounds screamed out, glowing as they tore through space. Human torpedoes slammed into Dominion shields, shattering them like glass. The Iron Requiem itself emerged like a monster from the storm, its massive cannons firing in perfect rhythm. Alien ships tried to regroup, but the nebula turned their advantage into weakness. Their sleek sensors failed in the storm, while the humans, using older, simpler systems, fought with deadly precision. The Dominion fleet outnumbered the humans 10-1, yet in the narrow clouds of the nebula, their numbers meant nothing. For an hour, the battle raged. Ships exploded in every direction, fire illuminating the storm. The humans moved like hunters, striking from the mist and vanishing again. By the time the Dominion realized the trap, their formation was broken and their courage shattered. When the last of them retreated, limping out of the nebula, only a fraction of their mighty fleet remained. The humans had lost ships too, scarred and burning, but the Iron Requiem still stood, her guns silent now, her hull dark against the nebula's light. Across the galaxy, silence followed the reports. Aliens who had mocked humanity now stared in disbelief. Twice the humans had faced impossible odds. Twice their obsolete ships had destroyed modern fleets. On distant worlds, whispers spread. Could it be true? Were the humans not weak, but stronger than ever? Species once enslaved by the Dominion began to hope. Resistance leaders sent secret messages: if humanity fights, then maybe we can fight too. Inside the Iron Requiem, Elias Core studied the wreckage. He knew what was coming. The Dominion would not stop. Their pride would not allow it. They would gather everything: massive fleets, superweapons, warlords from every corner of their empire. The humans would soon face the full strength of the Dominion. But Elias did not fear. He looked at his officers and spoke quietly. Let them come. We have only begun to remind the galaxy who we are. The nebula drifted behind them as the human fleet advanced once more, deeper into enemy space. The war had only started, but already the galaxy trembled. And in the shadows of distant stars, a terrifying question grew louder. If this was what humanity could do with old ships, what would happen if they unleashed their true strength? The Dominion had been humiliated twice. Their fleets, sleek and modern, had been torn apart by what they called relics. But warlords of the Dominion were proud, and their pride could not be allowed to break. So they gathered their strength. From dozens of star systems, ships were summoned. Cruisers, battleships, carriers, even experimental dreadnoughts, all called into one massive armada. It was the largest fleet the galaxy had seen in centuries, so vast that its arrival darkened suns. At its head was Supreme Warlord Trazek, a ruthless commander who had never lost a war. "Bring me the humans," he roared to his generals. "Crush their rusting fleet and scatter their bones across the stars. No one will ever dare to speak their name again." The galaxy listened and trembled. On neutral worlds, broadcasts showed the Dominion's armada moving like a storm. Species already enslaved by the Dominion whispered prayers for mercy. But in the shadows, in hidden corners, other voices rose. If humanity could face such power, maybe the galaxy had a chance. Small resistance cells across conquered worlds began sending coded signals. Their messages were short, desperate, and filled with hope. Humans, do not stop. We are ready. On the Iron Requiem, Admiral Elias Core listened to those messages. He stood on the command bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, as holograms of distant worlds flickered before him. His officers spoke of the growing armada, the impossible odds, the scale of the storm about to descend. But Elias's voice remained steady. The Dominion believes they have us outnumbered. They always have. What they cannot understand is this: humanity has never needed equal numbers. We need only opportunity. His second-in-command, Captain Lirave, leaned forward. "Admiral, if they send their entire armada, we cannot win in open space." Elias nodded. "Then we do not fight them in open space." The humans had prepared something the galaxy could not imagine. While the Dominion relied on speed and technology, the humans relied on patience and cunning. For weeks, their old ships had been seeding the void with traps, minefields hidden in asteroid belts, torpedoes buried in drifting wreckage, stations turned into silent fortresses. The battlefield was chosen not by the Dominion, but by humanity. When the Dominion armada finally arrived, it stretched across the void like a wall of fire. Thousands of ships, their weapons glowing, their engines roaring. Warlord Trazek's voice echoed across open channels. "Humans, you are nothing but rust and dust. Your time is finished. Face us, and die." Elias answered at last, his voice cold, sharp, and unshaken. "Then come and see how the dead fight." The battle began. The Dominion's front lines surged forward, unleashing waves of plasma and energy beams. Space itself seemed to ignite under their firepower. Against such force, any sane fleet would have fled. But the human ships did not move. They waited. Then the traps came alive. Asteroid fields suddenly exploded, revealing hidden railguns that fired with devastating precision. Entire Dominion squadrons were torn apart before they could react. Minefields ignited, shredding cruisers into twisted wrecks. From the darkness, ancient human battleships emerged, their cannons blazing, their armor shrugging off fire that should have destroyed them. The Iron Requiem led the charge, her massive guns roaring. Rail slugs ripped through a Dominion carrier, splitting it in half with one devastating shot. Torpedo volleys slammed into dreadnoughts, breaking their shields and leaving them exposed to the killing fire of human destroyers. 4 hours, the battle raged. The Dominion's numbers were overwhelming, but their formation broke as they chased ghosts. Every time they thought they had cornered the humans, Elias revealed another trap, another ambush hidden in the stars. Old ships that looked like rusting hulks fought with the fury of legends, their crews relentless, their guns merciless. But the humans paid a price. Ships burned. Hulls cracked. Crews were lost. Every victory was carved from blood and sacrifice. On the bridge of the Iron Requiem, sparks rained from the ceiling, consoles flickered, and alarms screamed. Yet Elias stood tall, unbroken. At last, Warlord Trazek himself entered the fray aboard his massive flagship, a vessel larger than any human ship. Its guns lit the void with deadly power, tearing through human lines. One by one, human cruisers fell. The fleet was holding, but barely. And then, in the middle of chaos, something happened the galaxy would never forget. As Trazek's flagship advanced, the Iron Requiem turned to face it. Elias's voice rang across the human fleet. "All ships, clear my path." The Titan-class warship surged forward, its ancient engines burning like suns. Dominion fire hammered it from all sides, but still it came. Railguns thundered. Torpedoes slammed home. The Iron Requiem rammed through enemy lines, heading straight for the heart of the Dominion fleet. Warlord Trazek laughed as the human ship approached. "One relic against me? Fool." But Elias did not laugh. His eyes burned with cold fury as he gave the order. "Fire everything." The Iron Requiem unleashed its full fury. Every cannon, every missile, every weapon fired at once. The void became a storm of destruction. Dominion ships around Trazek's flagship were annihilated instantly. The flagship itself shuddered under the onslaught, its shields cracking, its armor buckling. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible unfolded, an ancient human titan tearing apart the pride of the Dominion. When the smoke cleared, both ships drifted in ruins, locked together in death. But across the battlefield, the Dominion armada faltered. Their warlord was gone. Their pride shattered. And the humans still stood. For the third time, against impossible odds, the so-called obsolete fleet had survived. And for the first time, the galaxy believed. The Dominion armada had been broken. Their warlord was dead, their mighty flagship shattered, and their fleets scattered in chaos. Across the galaxy, shockwaves rippled like thunder. For centuries, no one had stood against the Dominion and survived. Now, humanity had faced them 3 times and still remained. On enslaved worlds, whispers turned into hope. Chains rattled as rebels spoke the name, human, like a secret prayer. In hidden bunkers, resistance leaders raised their heads for the first time in years. They began to move, gathering weapons, spreading word, the humans fight. The humans win. In the Grand Council of Neutral Empires, panic filled the air. Some leaders wanted to join the humans, to throw their fleets behind them. Others shouted in fear, warning that humanity would become as dangerous as the Dominion. Voices clashed, arguments burned, but one truth was clear: the galaxy could no longer ignore humanity. On the Iron Requiem, repairs filled the air with sparks and smoke. Engineers worked day and night, sealing holes, patching armor, replacing broken systems. The Titan-class ship had rammed through hell and survived, but only barely. Its scars told the story of the battle, yet its heart still beat strong. Admiral Elias Corr stood at the viewport, staring at the stars. His officers brought reports. Fleets readying in nearby systems, alien resistance fighters asking for help, neutral species offering secret supply routes. For the first time in generations, humanity was not alone. "Admiral," Captain Lyra said, her voice steady but urgent. "The galaxy is watching us. If we stand still, fear will rise again. But if we move, if we strike, they will follow." Elias turned, his face calm but his eyes burning with resolve. "Then we give them something to believe in." The fleet moved once more, striking deeper into Dominion space. But this time, they did not fight alone. From hidden moons and ruined worlds, small rebel ships joined the humans. They were weak, outdated, and fragile, but their spirit burned. They followed humanity into battle, striking Dominion patrols, sabotaging supply lines, spreading chaos where none had dared before. Each victory was small, but together they built a storm. The Dominion felt the pressure. Worlds that had bowed in silence now whispered rebellion. Their slave armies began to fracture. Fear, once their greatest weapon, was slipping away. But the Dominion was not finished. In the cold heart of their empire, deep inside a fortress star that no enemy had ever seen, the High Council of Warlords gathered. They raged, their pride shattered, their empire trembling. One warlord slammed a clawed fist against the table. "These humans are not an enemy. They are a plague. And we have the cure." From the darkness, they revealed a secret long kept hidden, an ancient weapon buried beneath their empire. Older than their rule, built from forgotten technology. It was not a fleet, not an army, but a machine forged to end civilizations in a single strike. They called it the Eclipse Engine. Its power was simple, brutal, and absolute. A weapon that could blot out suns, extinguish the light of entire systems, leaving nothing but cold silence. Once awakened, it could destroy fleets without firing a single shot. The warlords swore to unleash it. If fleets could not defeat humanity, then the stars themselves would burn. Far from that dark chamber, whispers of the Eclipse Engine reached the humans. A captured Dominion officer spoke of it before dying, his voice trembling. "They will end the suns. They will erase you. Nothing survives the eclipse." On the Iron Requiem, silence followed the report. Officers exchanged grim looks, the weight of those words pressing down on them. The humans had fought fleets, faced impossible odds, and won. But how did one fight a weapon that could kill entire systems? Captain Lyra broke the silence. "If it is real, we cannot wait for it to come to us. We must destroy it first." Elias nodded slowly. His mind was already turning, calculating, planning. "The Dominion believes the Eclipse Engine will end us. But a weapon is nothing without those who wield it. We strike before it is ready. We take the fight to their heart." The officers nodded, though fear lingered in their eyes. This would not be like any battle before. They would have to go deep into Dominion space, beyond their fleets, beyond their defenses, into the very core of the Empire. But humanity had never chosen the safe road. Across the galaxy, allies rallied. Resistance fighters sent coordinates, smugglers delivered stolen Dominion codes, and neutral captains whispered of safe passages. For the first time, the galaxy was moving together, not under fear, but under hope. And at the center of it all, the so-called obsolete human fleet prepared to face something greater than any armada. The Iron Requiem's engines roared to life. Her scars still showed, but her guns were ready. Around her, other human ships formed up, joined by ragged rebel squadrons. Admiral Elias Corr stood tall on the bridge, his voice steady, his gaze unflinching. "The Dominion believes they hold the power of the stars themselves. Then we will remind them, humanity was forged under harsher suns, in deadlier fires. And we are still here." The fleet turned toward the heart of darkness. Ahead waited the Eclipse Engine, the weapon meant to end them all. The galaxy held its breath. The galaxy trembled as whispers of the Eclipse Engine spread. It was more than a weapon. It was fear given form, a machine said to drink the light of suns, to turn thriving worlds into cold tombs. If the Dominion unleashed it, no fleet, no army, no rebellion could survive. Admiral Elias Corr knew there was no time left. On the Iron Requiem, he studied the holographic map of Dominion space. The Eclipse engine was hidden deep in their empire, buried inside a fortress star called Draxus Prime. To reach it, they would need to cross territory crawling with fleets, mines, and defenses. It was suicide. But humanity had always chosen the impossible road. The fleet prepared for war. Human ships, scarred, patched, yet unbroken, formed up beside ragged squadrons of rebel craft. They were a strange sight, war relics alongside salvaged transports and stolen Dominion frigates. But their crews burned with the same fire. On rebel channels, voices whispered, "If humanity dares, we will dare with them." The journey began. Through the black void, the fleet moved in silence. Dominion patrols swept the stars, but traps and ambushes cleared their path. In one system, human destroyers lured enemy scouts into an asteroid field that erupted with hidden mines. In another, rebels disguised their ships as Dominion supply barges, slipping past sensors undetected. Every step brought them closer to Draxus Prime. Every step tightened the noose. Finally, the fleet reached the Syndral Expanse, a vast region of collapsing stars and drifting black holes. Beyond it lay the Fortress Star. But guarding the expanse was a Dominion blockade of terrifying size. Hundreds of warships waited, forming a wall of fire between the humans and their target. On the Iron Requiem's bridge, silence filled the air as officers studied the display. The blockade was too strong to fight head-on. Even Elias frowned. For the first time, doubt crept into the crew's eyes. Then Captain Lyra spoke, her voice sharp and steady. "Admiral, what if we don't break the wall? What if we make them break themselves?" Elias turned to her, his eyes narrowing with interest. "Explain." She pointed at the expanse, where unstable stars pulsed with deadly energy. "Those stars are collapsing. Their gravity shifts constantly. If we can bait the Dominion fleet inside, the expanse itself will tear them apart." A dangerous plan. A desperate one. Exactly the kind humanity had always thrived on. Elias gave the order. The human fleet advanced, weapons blazing, pretending to charge the blockade head-on. Dominion commanders laughed, certain that the so-called relics were rushing to their deaths. They pursued eagerly, hungry to crush the humans once and for all. But as the battle raged, the humans retreated step by step into the expanse. The Dominion followed, their numbers swelling, their formation tightening. Then the trap was sprung. Collapsing stars flared, their gravity surging. Black holes twisted space like knives. Dominion ships collided, shields failed, and entire squadrons vanished into the void. Human ships darted between the chaos with brutal precision, their older engines handling the unpredictable tides better than modern Dominion drives. Railguns fired. Torpedoes struck. Dominion vessels tore themselves apart in panic as the expanse devoured them. When the smoke cleared, the once mighty blockade was shattered. Wreckage drifted among the stars, glowing like dying embers. Against impossible odds, humanity had carved a path through the storm. The fleet pushed forward, battered but alive. Ahead, Draxus Prime loomed, a fortress star wrapped in steel and fire, its surface bristling with weapons. At its core, buried beneath layers of armor and defenses, the Eclipse engine pulsed like a sleeping beast. The rebels on board their smaller ships fell silent. Many had never seen such a fortress, and fear chilled their blood. But on the Iron Requiem, Elias's voice cut through the silence. "This is where the Dominion believes they are strongest. But this is where they will fall." The plan was simple, brutal, and final. Human and rebel fleets would strike the fortress from all sides, tearing open a path. Then a small strike group, led by the Iron Requiem, would dive into the heart of Draxus Prime to destroy the Eclipse engine before it could awaken. The officers exchanged grim looks, but none hesitated. They knew the cost. Many would not return. But they also knew the truth. If the Eclipse engine lived, the galaxy would die. The fleet roared forward. Engines lit the dark, guns prepared for war. The final battle had begun. From the depths of Draxus Prime, alarms screamed. Dominion warlords cursed as human relics and rebel ships stormed their gates. The Eclipse engine pulsed faster, as if sensing its time had come. The galaxy held its breath. Would the humans destroy the weapon before it woke? Or would the stars themselves be extinguished? Draxus Prime filled the void like a dark god. The fortress star glowed with steel towers and bristling cannons, its surface crawling with Dominion fleets. Around it swirled defensive platforms, automated drones, and orbital guns capable of tearing apart planets. At its heart pulsed the Eclipse engine, hidden deep underground, its core throbbing with unnatural light. The human fleet approached, joined by ragged rebel squadrons. To the enemy, they looked small, weak, laughable compared to the fortress. But the Dominion warlords were no longer laughing. They had seen 3 armadas fall. They had seen their pride shattered by relics. Now they bared their teeth, determined to end humanity forever. The void exploded in fire. Thousands of Dominion cannons unleashed storms of plasma, cutting across space like rivers of fire. Human and rebel shields flared, hulls cracked, crews screamed, but still they advanced. The Iron Requiem led the charge, her Titan-class frame absorbing punishment that would have destroyed entire fleets. Her guns roared in answer, rail slugs ripping apart defense platforms with brutal precision. Rebel frigates darted through the chaos, striking from the shadows, firing stolen Dominion codes to confuse their enemy. Old human destroyers rammed enemy cruisers head-on, their explosions tearing open gaps in the Dominion lines. Every ship burned with desperation. Every crew knew this was not just another battle, it was survival itself. On the Iron Requiem's bridge, sparks rained from shattered consoles. Smoke filled the air, alarms screamed, but Admiral Elias Core stood unshaken. His voice carried like steel across the ship. "Push forward. Clear us a path to the fortress." The fleet obeyed. Inch by inch, they carved into the Dominion defenses. Explosions lit the void like falling stars. The cost was terrible. Rebel squadrons vanished, human cruisers fell silent, but the line did not break. Finally, the moment came. A narrow corridor opened through the firestorm, leading straight to the fortress's surface. "All ships, hold the line," Elias commanded. "The Requiem goes in." The Titan surged forward, its engines blazing, its guns tearing apart anything in its path. Dominion defenders swarmed like insects, but railguns shredded them, torpedoes gutted them. Rebel ships threw themselves in the way of enemy fire, buying seconds at the cost of their lives. Behind them, the rest of the fleet locked into place, forming a shield wall of steel and sacrifice to hold the Dominion back. The Iron Requiem plunged into the fortress atmosphere. Towers of metal loomed around it, bristling with cannons. The Titan's guns screamed in fury, leveling defenses, blasting open tunnels of fire. Inside the ship, bulkheads shook, crew members clung to their stations, yet still the Requiem pressed on. At last, they reached the core. Through shattered clouds of smoke, a massive dome rose from the surface of Draxus Prime. Its armored gates glowed with energy, protecting the chamber below. Beneath that dome lay the Eclipse engine, pulsing like a black sun, ready to awaken. "Target the dome," Elias ordered. The Requiem's main guns powered up, glowing brighter and brighter until the entire bridge shook with their charge. With a thunderous roar, the cannons fired. The first volley cracked the gates. The second tore holes through the shield. The third blasted the dome wide open, revealing the monster beneath. The Eclipse engine was a nightmare. It pulsed with waves of darkness, tendrils of energy lashing out like claws. Its glow was not light but hunger, devouring everything it touched. Sensors screamed warnings as power surged across the fortress. The weapon was waking. On the bridge, silence fell. Every officer felt the same chill. They were staring into something that should never have existed. Then Elias's voice cut through the fear. "We finish this now." The Requiem dove into the crater, guns blazing at the core. Rail slugs slammed into the Eclipse engine's armor, explosions shook its surface, torpedoes erupted in fire. But the weapon did not break. Instead, it lashed out. A wave of dark energy burst from its core, striking the Requiem like a hammer. Shields collapsed. Hull plating ripped apart. Consoles exploded across the bridge. The Titan groaned, metal shrieking under the assault. For a moment, it seemed the ship would be torn in half. But still it fought. Forward! Elias shouted. Drive it into the ground. Engines roared. The iron Requiem hurled itself deeper, closing the distance, guns firing point-blank into the monster. The Eclipse engine screamed, its power rising, its light devouring the sky. Crew members clung to their stations as the ship shuddered under the storm. Sparks fell like rain, smoke filled every corridor, but no one left their post. The Requiem lived for this moment. It had been forged for war, and now it would decide the fate of the galaxy. Through the chaos, Captain Lyra's voice cut through. Admiral, the core is too strong. Weapons alone won't destroy it. We need to go inside. Elias's eyes narrowed. Inside. Boarding teams, she said. We tear it apart from within. Silence fell across the bridge. The idea was madness. The Eclipse engine was alive with energy, a storm of death. But Elias saw no other path. He turned to his crew, his voice steady. As long as humanity breathes, we do not stop. Prepare the teams. The Iron Requiem's hangars opened. Dropships roared out, carrying human marines and rebel fighters into the heart of the storm. They plunged through fire, dodged lashing tendrils of energy, and aimed straight for the glowing wounds on the Eclipse engine's surface. The final fight had begun, not just in space, but inside the weapon that could end stars. And for the first time, the Eclipse engine trembled. The dropships tore through the storm of energy. Shields flickered, hulls burned, but the Marines held tight as they pierced the surface of the Eclipse engine. Its skin was not metal, but some strange alloy that pulsed like a living thing. It resisted, groaned, then cracked as explosives ripped it open. The humans forced their way inside. The corridors were alive. Pulses of black light flowed through walls, twisting like veins. Every step was a battle against gravity that shifted, against storms of energy that tried to tear them apart. Weapons fired, not at soldiers, but at the machine itself, cutting cables, blowing apart conduits, smashing anything that glowed. Captain Lyra led the charge. Her armor was scorched, her rifle hot in her hands, but she kept moving. Find the control heart, she shouted over comms. This monster dies today. Behind her, rebel fighters followed. They were smaller, weaker, but they fought with the fury of the desperate. Together, they carved deeper into the nightmare engine. On the Iron Requiem, Admiral Elias watched from the command chair. The Titan was burning. Fires raged across her decks, airlocks sealed as sections vented into the void. Yet the ship refused to fall. Every system that failed was patched, every wound covered, every surviving crewman giving everything they had. The Dominion fleet outside had regrouped, hurling everything they had at the human shield wall. Rebels screamed across comms as their ships were torn apart. Still, the wall held. Still, the humans gave no ground. This was not just war. This was defiance. Inside the Eclipse engine, the Marines reached the heart. It was vast, a cathedral of light and shadow. At the center floated the core, a sphere of black fire chained by rings of alien metal. Each pulse of its glow shook the ground, each beat like the heartbeat of a dying star. This is it, Lyra breathed. The core's tendrils lashed out, ripping apart walls, tearing through squads. Soldiers screamed, shields cracked, armor burned. But the humans pressed forward, planting charges, firing at weak points, forcing their way closer. Lyra slammed her rifle into the ground, pulling out a heavy explosive pack. Her voice was steady, even as the storm raged. This thing thinks it can rule the galaxy. Let's remind it who really does. They armed the charges. The core screamed. On the Iron Requiem, sensors lit up with warnings. The Eclipse engine was about to release another wave, one powerful enough to erase the fleet. The Titan had seconds. Elias looked at his crew. Broken, bloody, exhausted, but still standing. He smiled faintly. Then we buy them time. The Iron Requiem turned its guns toward the core. Every last shell, every missile, every torpedo was fired in one final storm. The Titan poured its life into that single barrage, lighting the skies with fire brighter than suns. The Eclipse engine reacted, tendrils striking back, beams of darkness tearing at the ship. The Requiem shuddered, tore open, fire consuming her decks. But she did not stop. She could not stop. And then, inside the core chamber, the charges detonated. Light and shadow exploded together. The sphere cracked, its chains snapping one by one. The ground split, walls collapsed, energy screamed as the heart of the weapon tore itself apart. Lyra and her squad were thrown into chaos. Some vanished in the blast, some clung to debris, but through it all, the captain's voice cut through. Fall back. Fall back to the dropships. The Marines ran through fire and collapsing tunnels, racing against death itself. Behind them, the core imploded, sucking everything inward. The Eclipse engine howled as it died, its voice echoing across the void. From space, the fortress star of Draxus Prime erupted. Towers shattered, fleets scattered, the very surface split apart. A wave of energy tore outward, not in destruction, but in collapse. The weapon devoured itself, swallowing the Dominion's pride whole. The Iron Requiem burned in silence, her hull breaking apart piece by piece. On the bridge, Elias stood tall, his hand on the railing, his gaze locked on the dying core. For humanity, he whispered. The Titan fell into the fire, dragging the heart of the weapon with her. And then, silence. When the light cleared, Draxus Prime was gone. Where once had been the greatest weapon of the Dominion, there was only a broken husk drifting in the void. The Dominion fleet, leaderless, shattered, began to retreat. One by one, their ships turned and fled, their courage finally broken. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The obsolete fleet of humanity still stood. Burned, battered, scarred, but alive. The rebels cheered, their cries echoing across every comm channel. Hope had returned to the stars. Captain Lyra, bloodied and burned, stood aboard a dropship watching the wreckage. Her voice was hoarse, but firm. They thought we were relics. They thought we were finished. Now they know. Humans don't fade. Humans endure. And across the galaxy, the message spread. The old warships of Earth had come, and they had ruled the stars once more. Humanity was no longer a legend. They were the future.